Now you might be thinking, what did go wrong with Silent Hill F, if anything? And you might be saying, but the game sold exceptionally well, sat pretty with the critics, and despite a more volatile reception from consumers, the overall sentiment was a positive one, easily. I say you're not far off, and you'd be dead on the money 9 times out of 10, but things can go wrong in more than one way. The most easily digestible is when a game is just bad. Sure, we could get all granular with it, but at the end of the day, it's open and shut. The plot thickens a whole lot when said game isn't bad. In fact, by all rights, it's good, maybe even great, but it should've, not could've, should have been better. In an effort to condense the negative side of Silent Hill F's reception, there were 2 common sentiments. Number 1, that it didn't feel like Silent Hill. And number 2, that the combat, well, kinda sucked. Or at the very least, it wasn't the right fit. I'm not trying to figure out whether this game was a good Silent Hill game, and even if I had the, 20 years of context required to entertain that premise, I actually think it's the least interesting part of the conversation. So I won't speak on the former so much. But the latter, well, I have a whole lot to say about that. Silent Hill F's Souls-like bend became an easy scapegoat. And while I know in my heart that something held this game back, I really don't think it was the combat. So this isn't a traditional review, and this probably isn't your standard analysis video either. It's not the first, because it's been 150 years since the game came out, so what do you need a review for? And it's not the second, because the kind of analysis expected of me would be far too abstracted from the player experience. Yes, I believe the community misguided and the blame misapplied, but I'm here to understand why, and to use that sentiment as a means to reveal the real reason Silent Hill F didn't secure a spot in the Video Game Hall of Fame, like it really should have. I called it a deep dive for a reason, and on that note, let's begin with... On the surface, Silent Hill F looks like a success story. Not a frictionless one by any means, but success doesn't demand perfection. I don't need to acknowledge the reception to prove that. The game speaks for itself, and bloody eloquently. For one, it boasts an incredible realization of 1960s Japan. Ebisugaoka is uniquely positioned as a town with a layout and architectural aesthetic that simultaneously screams feudal Japan, yet still perfectly represents the transitional Showa period and the modernity that comes with it. Feudal Japan isn't a unique aesthetic, well, neither is modern Japan, but bringing both to life as one combined vision is something I seldom see in video games. I appreciated the baked-in contrast there. That and it happens to fit suspiciously well as a backdrop for the narrative. This warring atmosphere mirrors Hinako's fractured mind and shoulders no dissonance as a result. They work together to weave an uncompromising narrative that is on paper masterful from beginning to end. Unsubtle, maybe, but the importance of subtlety is overstated, almost mythologized, to the point where a story might as well be subliminally transferred to a player's mind. Anything less than it's trite to some people. In saying that, I think Silent Hill F is subtle when it absolutely needs to be, but it's written in a way that makes the moral of the story, quote end quote, easy to grasp, so it can seem heavy-handed at times. If I'm honest, sometimes it seems like subtlety is a crutch word for people to say they disagree with the subject matter. Man up, motherfucker, we are capable of having a real conversation about things that really aren't as taboo as you think. Anyhow, this unified masterstroke is only bolstered by the return of Akira Yamaoka. And man, if this is what all of his work is like, then I absolutely have to bloody add those games to my backlog, and I'll think about playing them every now and then, but never really have the, I'll listen to it on Spotify. Yeah. Look, the point is, this shit is raw, and funnily enough, it's almost better if you don't understand Japanese. There's a track with an eerie Japanese vocal performance that plays at the very beginning, and it's just that, and only that, until it makes a return in the end game, but now it's subtitled, and is like word for word what you've just experienced. It works akin to translating Expedition 33 soundtrack and being pretty glad you waited until you finished the game because it might just spoil everything. The bulk of the impact is hidden in Silent Hill F's soundscape, and to steer away from a super comprehensive review, as this isn't one, it was like a jar of the sweetest honey smashed over my head that is doing its job perfectly. All of this coalesces so powerfully, it only gets more interesting as the game lets loose the psychological horror angle and it bleeds into everything. The soundtrack, the soundscape, the aesthetic, it all spirals and fractures like the mind of our protagonist. This extends to how the monsters are portrayed, and the themes here breathe horrifying, twisted life into them. All the bells and whistles of a AAA game ring loudly too, animation work is wonderful, the Japanese voiceover is Oscar-worthy, it performs well enough and looks immaculate, the game is fucking amazing, but then, why isn't it? Well, as consequence for playing the game so late, and perhaps the reason why I was hesitant for so long, I knew the combat was the problem, or that's what it seemed like. There was a palpable dislike for Silent Hill F's commitment to a quasi-Souls-like combat system. While yes, I think this is misattributed, it's still real, and an emotion like that has to come from somewhere. A feeling is never wrong in that way. Though I will end up defending it, I felt the same for a time too. It felt clunky, unresponsive, Hinako moved slow, and her swings, especially her heavy swings, covered about the same distance my great-grandma would in a sprint. She's dead. Not to mention, Hinako is an athlete too, but her stamina bar is as long as my great-grandma's, and it was painful to run out of stamina in a few swings, especially if I didn't manage to kill whatever I was fighting. They'd already be winding up another attack and there'd be nothing I could do. That pain point is exacerbated by the sanity system, and my initial impressions were anything but positive. Hinako can focus, and in her focus see clearer the counter timings for each enemy, but it has an offensive use case too. If the button is held down for long enough, she can unleash a powerful attack, pretty much guaranteed to stagger any enemy. This sounds fine, but her sanity drains while she uses focus. And if you set combat to hard, which I did, getting hit while focusing seems to reduce it permanently. Without focus, countering was hit or miss. This red highlight to signify a counter opportunity doesn't appear if you're too far away. If you're attacking or dodging, some attacks don't even have it at all. And the cherry on top is that the bulk of what she encounters intentionally move in unnatural and unreadable ways. In practice, this makes countering far scarier than it needs to be. But avoiding this and the focus mechanic is a surefire way to make everything worse. I fear this is what happened to many of you, and while I minimized some of the pain with certain Omamori charms and a few stamina upgrades, I get it, the combat kinda does suck. But I don't know if that's true, and if I'm right, why does everyone think it does? Here's an analogy. A man is sent to clear the leaves from his driveway. Unbeknownst to him, the leaves are made of metal, and his rake snaps in two. Sure, I doubt he has the best rake in the whole entire world, but is it really to blame here? No! The rake wasn't made for clearing sharp heavy metal leaves, thus it's the job, not the tool. Silent Hill F's combat system is one of the only meaningful ways the player interacts with the game and all of the various systems that make the experience what it is. So it's really no surprise the discourse shook out this way. Now, if I'm gonna cleanly translate this to Silent Hill F, I'll need to show you that the combat can be good, under the right circumstances. I won't draw this out, so I'll only give two solid examples. Example 1. The tool doesn't break if it's used sparingly. For far too much of the game, combat is a crutch. It's as if you can feel the developers thinking, hey, Hinako has to get from point A to point B, but we don't really have anything interesting to say until point B. What can we do to fix that? Well, instead of making the path to point B shorter, they litter it with enemies. And while I would compliment the game's enemy variety in a general sense, applied like this, it's beyond repetitive. But all of it made so much more sense when combat was used to punctuate exploration, or puzzle solving, or the narrative itself, when it was used sparingly. I enjoyed exploring the abandoned middle school. Suddenly, I didn't have to worry about encountering the same enemy around every corner, and around the same corner every time I rounded the corner. I was able to explore, rack my brain over fucking girl code, and escape the gauntlet I expected to be put through. In this case, the combat works. It isn't perfect, but it's a welcome and positive addition to the gameplay loop. Now for example 2, the tool gets an upgrade. This is a bit of a spoiler, so if you weren't expecting one, close your eyes, cover your ears, but keep the video playing. Thanks. In Silent Hill F, there are two versions of our protagonist, in two different worlds. Whatever any of it means and whether it's real or not is irrelevant, but the gameplay differs in a few ways, not all of them good. She has infinite weapon durability, but there are like a billion more enemies, and they don't die for good this time. I'd like to meet the person who thought that was a good idea. In both worlds, some encounters are best avoided, but in this world, the choice is made for you. The worst part is that avoiding enemies isn't achieved by way of some deep and rewarding stealth system, it's functionally the same to avoiding enemies in Dark Souls, which is to say it doesn't feel like you're supposed to be doing it. But the game solves this problem for itself later down the line. I hated these long, grueling areas with respawning enemies and objectives scattered around maze-like structures. Then she cuts her arm off. Terrible, terrible, terrible implication story-wise, but the fox arm is super cool looking and more importantly, super fun as a weapon, at least in comparison. The arm is more responsive, it's faster, more satisfying, it has a much better focus attack, even Hinako's version of Spartan Rage, and the sweetest, most most delectable cherry on top is that it lets you stop the enemies from respawning. Wow, that's all it took. Again, it isn't perfect, but man, if it wasn't a breath of fresh air. The enemies didn't stop coming, in fact there were probably more of them, but I genuinely had fun. The most insulting part of this all is that these examples highlight two solutions to the problem, not one easily missable fix. The combat works when the job is right for the tool, or the tool is made right for the job, and for too long the game sits in an uncomfortable middle ground and really suffers for it. But we're not done. None of this actually matters, because for a single 10 to 12 hour playthrough, I, and I'm sure many others, would readily forgive it all. So if this isn't the problem, then, well, at this point, what is? I guess I'm following a bit of a trend here. We're digging deeper, but we're also zooming out. From the combat, to what surrounds it, to how what surrounds it is contextualized in the grander scope of Silent Hill F. There are many games inked into the history books that were initially far more controversial than you might think. And this might have been one of them, had it only required a single playthrough for the full experience. You see, Hinako's story is structured like a one and done, 10 to 12 hour survival horror game. The initial impact of Ryukishi's storytelling is admittedly blunted by many common pain points, but as we've established, these can soften over time. And in time, Silent Hill F would have solidified itself as an absolute classic, and a must play. Except belying its structure is the expectation that we'll play it more than once. More than twice. What was a nasty bit of friction put behind us is now a thing we know stands in front of us. However much each playthrough differs from the last is of little importance if it fails to motivate any more than the first. To be clear, and honest, I haven't played this game more than once. That's not a gap in my thesis, that is the thesis. I didn't play it again because I didn't want to. I cared so deeply about this narrative, and there are things I know, things that are too personal to the women in my life, and not involving me to get that out of the way, but things that made it relatable and thought-provoking. I wanted to know more. Had this been a game half as long and explicitly designed to be replayed, I would have done so. You know, even if I had, would the good have outweighed the bad the second time around? The third? The fourth? I didn't want to find out, and in my opinion, that is the failure here. All of this is to say that I don't think Silent Hill F is bad, clearly. Rather, I think it's far too good to have relegated itself to fall in line beside games that have no place next to the almost masterpiece this game was. Hey, if you're still with me, I'm James. If you happen to enjoy the video, please consider dropping a sub. I promise, I am in it for the long run. And if you happen to enjoy the more analytical spin, I've done another video like this on The Last of Us Part 2, and it didn't get many views, but you know, maybe you can boost it. Thanks.